Welcome to Who Knew. We are fans of the current series of Doctor Who, and here we discuss our likes, dislikes, and insights into the modern regeneration of the show. Subscribe, review, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, or our YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhoKnewPodcast. All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com. You can leave comments there or email us at whoknewpodcast@gmail.com. We also have an Instagram and Twitter account. Tweet at us at whoknewpodcast. Find us on Facebook. Today's episode is episode 11 of season 9, Heaven Sent. As you come into this world, something else is born. It moves slowly but never stops. You will run, it will walk. You will rest, it will not. One day you will linger too long. You will notice a second shadow close to your own. Your life will then be over. This episode is written by Stephen Moffat, directed by Rachel Talalay. It originally aired on the 28th of November 2015 and was watched by 6.19 million viewers. Hi, this is Eugene. Let's introduce ourselves.
Hi, this is Frank.
Hi, this is Brian.
Howdy, this is Auburn.
Hello, it's been a while. It's Kelsey.
Hey, this is Josh.
And today we have a guest with us, Nate.
Hi, this is Nate.
Nate is from Temple of Geek, long friend of the podcast, and glad to have you back.
It's good to be back, especially for this episode.
I know, way back when from Angels Take Manhattan.
Was it Angels Take Manhattan?
It was either Angels Take Manhattan, and I was also here for, I can't remember the name of the episode, but the one with the wooden dolls with Amy, Rory, and Eleven. The Nightmare one.
Yes, I forgot the name of that one as well.
Night Terrors?
Night Terrors, yes.
But I think it was Daleks, no, the Manhattan one. Angels Take Manhattan, that we're like, I want to be back for this episode.
Oh, when we made the reference, yes.
The challenge was extended.
And apparently accepted, because here you are.
You just read the basic opening that the Doctor had for that one, and I just thought that was great. I love the, death has been your companion since the day you were born ID, even though they made it kind of, like a stalker kind of thing. But I did like that ID, and I liked how he did it. I thought that was a great opening for this.
Yeah, I agree. There's also a deleted scene that shows all of that text written on one of the walls in the castle, but like it's missing some of it.
You can see it for like a split second.
It's funny. I have it up playing on my phone right here, and I think I just saw it when he backs away from a window.
Yes.
Yeah, the deleted scene shows.
Right.
Yeah, the deleted scene shows more of it. This one, in the broadcasted episode, it's very quick.
Right.
You don't need
and then
it.
Some of the letters are really highlighted and ornate, and it says, "Drink more Ovaltine." Sorry, old reference.
It's really great for a rewatch too. It sets up like all of the little counters and pieces of the puzzle coming later that you don't realize until you watch it again. So good for them to plan all that in the kind of the age before streaming, or as streaming was just getting started.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, every clues are starting to lay it out, like you said, like almost from frame one. And I got to say that I didn't remember exactly how it played out. So even though I knew the gist, a little bit more than the gist, I was still enjoying like, wait, what is that now? And I didn't realize this, and like, so I was following along just as much as I was remembering.
I like how they were talking about death as a constant companion, and you're thinking of this whole opening statement as just death overall, but it's also discussing, without going too far into the episode, but the overall feeling of the episode, that if you linger too long, that second shadow arrives.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember where that was said before, that like death is the constant companion to the Doctor, but it was in previous season.
It's also in Star Trek.
Mm.
It's in Generation. It's the end of Generations where he says to Riker, I think, and it is, death stalks us all alive. I think of death more as a companion that guides us along the journey. That's what I always get.
Yeah, nice. That's our first Star Trek reference, so we're hitting all the marks today. Technical issues, audio issues. A teleport booth begins to operate, and the doctor appears inside it. He speaks to whoever can hear. If you were any part of killing her and are not afraid, then you understand nothing at all. I am the doctor. I'm coming to find you, and I will never, ever stop. He discovers that he is in a stone fortress and sees a hooded figure that is slowly moving toward him. He wonders if this is all a trap, a prison, or a torture chamber. Over the course of narrowly avoiding the creature, he asks questions. What is this place? What did you say that made the creature slow down? How are you going to win? He realizes that he's in a trap designed to scare him to death. Discovering that secret truths can slow the creature down, he screams, I didn't leave Gallifrey because I was bored. I left because I was scared.
Running through the fortress, he can see the stars and concludes that it must be 7,000 years since Clara died. At the end, the doctor punches a solid wall that is 400 times stronger than diamonds. The creature kills him, and the cycle starts over until he punches the wall and is killed again, and again, and again. The stars have moved 12,000 years, 600,000 years, 1,200,000 years, 2 million years, 20 million years, 52 million years, a billion years, over a billion years, 2 billion years, and with a punch, he watches as the wall, now dug out by billions of punches, cracks and opens. He emerges into a desert and finds that he was trapped in his confession dial. In the distance lies the citadel of the Time Lords. The Doctor has come home the long way round, and the hybrid prophecy to destroy Gallifrey is the Doctor.
I think my favorite part of the whole episode, I love this episode, and I love it even more now, is that he gets cut at the very end. Well, the first time he dies, he gets cut off with what he's saying. The servant boy? What was it?
Shepherd boy.
The shepherd's boy, and then he gets cut off. And then because he gets further into the punch tunnel,
Yes.
it takes longer for the thing to kill him, just long enough to get the full sentence out for us to hear it bit by bit. I just thought that was the most clever thing.
I was noticing that same thing too, watching it again, because the first watch I didn't really catch that. It was just like, you're caught up in like the drama and suspense of it all, but then you're realizing he's getting more time, like you said, as he gets further and further into the tunnel.
Yeah, and I looked up The Shepherd's Boy. It's a real grim fairy tale. I'd never heard of it until this episode.
Oh wow. So he does. Yeah, he says something about the Grimm's fairy tale, the Grimm's brothers Grimm. But I thought maybe I just misheard it because he said it so quick.
Yeah, they were on his darts team.
Yes.
Oh, that's what he said. There was a few times that he said some things very quickly that I had to go back and put the subtitles on for.
In my first watch, I didn't like it. I did not like this episode. And I didn't understand why he was going faster each rebirth to say more. And then it was, when I watched it again, oh, he's going deeper in, so it gives him that extra few seconds because so it's like, okay. But when I first watched it, that went over my head. I did not get it at all.
Well, you're also in that time. I mean, it's basically once they tell you what's happening, it's just a montage.
Right.
So you're being inundated with information and aha moments. So for you to pick up on such subtle things.
The first time when he goes and starts hitting the wall and you don't know what's going on, it seems very futile. And I think that's part of the point, but yeah, it's very confusing until they get rolling with the montage and you start to see the dent and understand a little more. And even then, I think if it's your first time watching the entire episode, it can go over your head because it is a little odd and not clearly like pointed out.
The other thing that struck me at first that I really liked right at the very beginning was the juxtaposition of the modern technology in the ancient castle, even though it's just televisions. That's the only I guess you can consider a shovel modern technology, but it made it otherworldly and kept it in the universe.
Well, let's stay with the story and just call a spade a spade.
Right.
Sorry. I'm taking over you, Gene. Come on. Mix it up.
You were waiting on that one.
He's going to dig his own grave.
Hey, that sounded like you did a spit take, Josh.
Now, during that part when he's... go ahead.
Just speaking of the set design, like I like the simplicity of the corridors and the castle walls, but each room had that little box of gears that, didn't didn't look like they were able to move all the levels, like, but
Yeah.
they were enough to give you that idea that everything is in motion in this castle.
And I think Moffat just likes clockwork gears because he uses it for the clockwork droid. And then in Deep Breath, that droid comes back, and then, or sort of comes back, the half-face man. And then in here,
That's because they're so awesome and look good.
Well, especially for 12, he has a whole clockwork opening too.
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, speaking of the opening, this is a companion light episode, so Capaldi's name is the only one that is credited in the opening sequence, and it doesn't fade away like normal.
It just
shoots. It sticks and it shoots through the camera lens, sort of thing.
And let's be clear, this isn't a companion light episode. This is a companion dead episode.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Speaking of that one, I have to look it up so I get it correct, because that one line, I just watched my best friend die in agony. My day can't get any worse. Let's see what we can do about yours. Like, oh, damn.
Yeah. I love when the Doctor threatens people. It's badass, and at the same time, when you know his history of being good and making a point to be good and having to basically every having a companion so he's not lonely. Everything, the subtext of it is, I do everything in my power not to be the horrible person I can possibly be. So it's the Doctor lies and all these bad things. He sacrifices his friends without realizing it. And, he turns people into soldiers. Like that. So it's always this undercurrent of he's dangerous, but also a savior. So it keeps him in check. And now that there's nothing to keep him in check in this episode, he's unleashed. But the ironic thing is he's unleashing himself against himself, which is very therapeutic and cathartic.
Yeah, Moffat said he wrote this to deal with grief and how the death of Clara affects the Doctor, because he couldn't do it for the death of Amy and Rory. So he wanted to do an episode dealing with grief for the Doctor, and this is what he came up with.
Yeah, I was saying this episode is about love, grief, and reincarnation.
And fear.
And fear, yeah. Well, I think fear is wrapped up within grief.
Yeah.
The fear of life without someone, and what it may do to.
It's just mentioned a lot in the dialogue, especially in the first part, being scared and all that kind of stuff. I noticed it this last time. And so it was like, ooh, I'm trying to be insightful. So
yeah, off of what you just said, it's almost like he's always putting up a brave front to, like, he has other people around so he can pretend he's not afraid. Mm-hmm. Now that no one's there, he could just be afraid.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, I do have something on fear, because there was an edit I did about this episode with Listen, because I realized this episode has a lot of exactly what the Doctor mentioned about fear from Listen. It was like, let me tell you about scared. Your heart is beating so hard you can feel it through your hands. There's so much blood and oxygen pumping through your brain. It's like rocket fuel. Right now, you could run faster and you could fight harder. You could jump higher than you ever have in your life. You are so alert, you can slow down time. What's wrong with scared? Scared is a superpower, and it's your superpower. There's a danger in this room. Guess what? It's you. Do you feel it? Do you think he feels scared? Do you think he's scared? Nah. And then his loser, turn your back on him. But that's exactly what the Doctor was doing in this episode because he was scared.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's good.
That just brings back Danny Pink. Like, when he was a kid, it's like that was such a great in that episode, and I love that it's tied into this episode.
Yeah, and does that also have the chalkboard as well?
Yes, that's what I was going to go for, because both of those, Listen and the Christmas face huggers.
Last Christmas.
I thought Last Christmas was okay. Now I got the titles wrong. Sorry.
No worries.
But having the chalkboard instantly brought me back to both of those stories, which again tie in thematically somewhat with this, with Clara giving up and wanting to stay in that dream world, and the way to just try and get somebody to think and to be in the presence and go, okay, this is my time. I got to use it. I got to communicate.
Actually, I like that you brought that up, because it was something I wanted to talk about also. What was a thought when watching this is that the Doctor was constantly wanting to give up also, wanting to just subside and be like, can't I lose for once? And Clara in his mind is that driving factor telling him, no, you need to win.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's kind of a turn on phrase from the Doctor Dances and the Empty Child of kind of everybody lives just this once. Everybody lives, and then he's like, "Well, can't I just lose this once?"
Yeah.
I did love
Also,
that he retreated to the TARDIS in the time for him to think.
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant. I really liked that
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Those are my
Yeah, I
favorite
like-
scenes. When he's in the TARDIS,
uh,
for me, that's my favorite scenes.
yeah, I like how that gives the fans time in the TARDIS, and even with Clara or whatever, like we still get all the other stuff, even though we're in this one location. It is a really great way to round out the episode to give you a taste of what the show is, as opposed to in this episode we're only here.
Now, like I said, I did not like when I first watched it. I did not like it when the second time I watched it or the third time over this period of time. So this last time I watched it this morning, taking some notes, was the time I liked it. But even before then, I could understand and appreciate why people liked it. I mean, like you said, the setting, the the lighting when he's digging and it changes to nighttime and the sun is setting. It's like, it is beautiful. The cinematography is great, but and some of the writing, like we've said, like Nate has even said, is great. It's just really powerful. But when he's saying, if she's dead and you think I'm weak, it's like, whoever knows the Doctor would think you're weak when that happens. You go into a murderous rage when something like that happens. You deal with the rat nos because of,
Yeah, but if you think
roads.
about, I mean, again, you don't think this stuff until you've deconstructed the episode, but like he's talking to himself, and we
Right, like
tell
the first, yeah,
ourselves, yeah, what we tell ourselves is not really what we need to hear. We tell ourselves things what we
but
think we're
at this
protecting
point, he's
ourselves
talking to
from.
the person or persons who put
Right,
him in there.
right,
So he's
which,
still talking to the Time Lords, but he doesn't know who he's talking to.
right.
Doesn't
Well,
know
that's
yet.
the
Yeah.
thing. Right, right. Like again, like it was so long ago since I watched this. I'm still, until you just said that, unclear that did he put himself in there or did the Time Lords put him in there? Because I've been under the impression while I was watching it with my vague memory that he did this to himself because of his grief. Like, I can't deal with this. I have to do this Time Lordy thing that we do to deal with grief. Put ourselves in a little
Right, you
box.
didn't know that at the beginning of the episode of what was going on.
Right, but once I remember, but I had a vague
He
memory of that he was trapped in a thing,
Right.
and then as I
he was
started to
put in.
recall,
Yeah,
he was put in. Okay,
he was
well, I didn't.
teleported there from the previous episode.
Yeah, from
That's the one thing I want to
from
know
Diagon
about.
Alley.
Right. Which I don't know if he was, because he didn't have the teleport bracelet on. And this that we're watching right now, the 7,000 years have already gone by at this point. So the first time, what was it? What was he like?
So he's been there, 2 billion, over 2 billion years. So that makes, we know why the skulls are there. We know why all the other things are there. Was the first version that showed up walking around naked because he left his clothes by the fire?
I do want to address that if I can, Eugene,
Sure.
from Moffat's interview. I don't remember where I saw it, but I did see that the first Doctor Moffat thinks was there and grew for hundreds of years. He was an old man, but when he got the idea that he needs more time, so he was going to he buffered or create a new Doctor from the buffered storage in the computer. So
My mistake, sorry.
So he was there for a long time. And that made me think, did he paint Clara's portrait while he was there the first time? Because what Moffat also said, he was putting clues for his future self all the time, trying to say, I'm in 12. And that was part of the arrows with the sand. So he might have hidden the words there, but he did hide the words, I'm in 12, behind the painting. But the Doctor never turned it around after that. So from the first Doctor, trying to leave clues all over the place. So hopefully when it comes back, he'll at least look at one of these. So it was hidden all over the place. So that helped me going, okay, what happened with the first time? Because at one point, he was naked. Did he stay naked the whole time? Were there clothes somewhere in the, that he got in there? I mean, is this all basically in his mind? So did he create clothes?
Yeah, I think it took
an odd kind of idea.
It was a progression where not every clue was set up that first time. It's like, well, he didn't get it that first time, so I'll set it up so he gets it this time. I have to add another clue, or that's the thing about, like, it's not necessarily.
You don't remember. So I think from what
no,
saying, it
but
was
I think
all the
there's
first
that.
time.
but there's that point where he figures out what was going on. I see it as there are small variances, just like in the movie Groundhog Day or wherever, he may have eaten his meal longer one time. He may have done this different one time. It all happens generally the same, but it builds upon itself until there may be times where it just repeats it exactly. I mean, we're talking about billions of times. So
True, but he never remembers anything like Groundhog Day does remember.
no, I know, but
that's
the thing is,
but that's a huge difference.
But when he realizes that he's been doing this, he then is basically trying to set his future self up. It's kind of like when I lose my keys, I don't look everywhere. I only look where I know I would have put them. It's kind of like you're sort of having a conversation with your future self that doesn't exist yet. No, it's not there. No, it's not there. Or like if I wanted, like, well, I'm going to put a plant here, so I'll never put my keys there. Then, so if I limit the places I put my keys, they'll only go in one spot. Like, you just kind of like leading myself to that. And at some point, if I repeated that day, I would realize, well, that didn't work. Well, that didn't work. Like, what do I got to tell future Josh? What do I got to do so future Josh only puts his keys here? And that's kind of how I see that he did it. I'm not discounting that. Could just be the same thing every single time, but I like to think of it the other way.
I thought it was the same thing every single time. And we'll just say speed running the course, if he had all the answers laid up front, wouldn't buy him any time anyway, because he only has, where'd it go? He only has 82 minutes from one extreme to the other at any given point in time. So he's really only got that much to work with, even if he got there immediately.
Well, can he run back and forth?
I guess so, but then he wouldn't have any time with the wall.
Well, he runs this one way, and then he runs the other. I just see. I think we are only seeing the important pieces. We don't need to go down the rabbit hole, which is right, which is wrong. I just see there's room in there for stuff that happened off screen.
I will give you that once he realizes what's happening, there is that possibility of him altering what he would have done.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not from the get-go. I think every time he emerged from the tank, it was exactly the same. But like at one time, there was, the shovel. The shovel wasn't always there until
Why didn't he use a shovel? That's one thing that kept bugging me.
Smack the wall with the shovel.
I think he made it
Better
obvious.
than a hand.
I think he made it obvious he hates gardening.
That's true.
Well, I think the reason. Well, here's. Before I knew or whatever, like when I was still under the impression that he did this to himself, I kind of was looking at this thing that he was doing to himself as a bit of self-flagellation. Like it was his fault she died. I can't deal with this grief. It's all guilt. So he's making himself suffer by putting himself in his own nightmare, which he could only have created himself. So, him breaking his hand a dozen times before he gets killed is part of that self-flagellation analogy.
Right. I've often wondered if the first time the veil was there. But if the veil was there the first time, because Moffat was saying that the doctor was an old man when he first happened, because the Time Lords put him in there to get the confession, and he's not confessing. So did they add the veil in the second time or something to give a different motivation to him? Because just by what Moffat said, he said the first time he was an old man and he never got to the diamond or never hit it because he was too old and had to plan to come back. And then he said his idea, it's not written anywhere, but that each incarnation, the doctor was there for about 3 weeks. So
I wondered that.
The whole thing to happen, because he said at the end, it was a day and a half just to crawl up the stairs. So he had mentioned that it was about 3 weeks every incarnation of him.
That seems that's a good amount. I agree with
It
that.
just shows the amount of petty the doctor has to like spite somebody.
But it's not surprising. But yeah, it's like, wow. You can be stubborn.
Back to I appreciate Frank bringing up the interview about like the clues, because the way that the episode's presented with the rooms resetting themselves, like I guess to leave those clues he had to put them deep into the rooms, like either behind the painting or under the pile of dirt, because Yeah, and I guess they could have explained that in the episode, but it would have taken away some of the mystery of like what does this mean and how did it get here? It also would have created probably some more dissonance because I guess he could leave things like some rooms didn't reset, but some rooms do reset completely.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah, so that could be been an issue they were just trying to avoid by not even trying to explain it. You know, like sometimes we really want like an explanation of how things happen, but if there isn't a good one, just ignore it and don't even try.
Yeah, so that was my initial sort of point of contention with this episode when I first watched it, is that if everything is resetting, certain things don't reset, so it's not a consistent world. But then you don't find out, or you know why it isn't at the end of the episode. I feel like we should have gotten, or I would have liked a clue earlier, because it's weird.
Why are only some not resetting? I'm still wondering. What did we discover at the end?
See, because for me, it's like the diamond thing that doesn't reset because it's the point of the episode. But then the thing that got me when I first watched this is that if this is just in his mind dealing with grief, I can throw out all those logic questions because it is a prison of my own creating. So it's not going to be consistent. It's going to be a very dreamlike stream of consciousness type of thing. But then when you find out it's the confession dial, it's like, no, there actually should be parameters to this thing, like logic parameters. But again, this is just my initial reaction of overthinking things like I normally do.
My theory on why some things reset and some things don't is because in off-screen time, like he went back in, and filled in the grave. He went back in and moved whatever around. Like I can't think of the specifics and stuff. So that's what I mean by, he leaves the skull plugged in. He writes bird to give him the idea to realize what's happening. Like the only thing that I think on screen that automatically reset was when he changes from wet clothes to dry clothes, because that's just happenstance. It just happened to reset itself because of the circumstances that he left his dry clothes there and then he changes his clothes. But
the grave.
That's kind of say what?
The grave. The grave fills in all by itself.
That one.
No, that's what I said. I feel in between things that we saw and all that 3 weeks that he was there, he went and filled the grave back in once he realized what was going on. I'd have to look at it again for me, but
yeah, that one I'm not sure if I'm behind that idea on that one.
I have a different theory. See if I think the reason why the diamond wall doesn't reset, I think the resetting happens when he gives a confession or tells a truth. And what we see the way he gets out of the wall, or the way that the creature stops each time, is by killing him. So that doesn't reset the castle, and then that's why there's still the skull there, and that's why bird is still written there, because at that point the creature that he has to tell truths to is taken out of the equation. He's the doctor is dying at that point, and then so that's why the skull is still in room 12.
Okay. You know what, I will think about that. That's an interesting, because I need that.
Yeah.
And this is sort of meta, but it's saying I am in 12, just like in the God Complex. They go to room 11 in the hotel, I think, with the 11th Doctor. That is.
Yeah, it's very meta. That it was room 12. He's 12, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going by the official numbers, yes.
Yeah. Well,
Did this episode remind anyone of the game Myst?
Yes. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah, way back when.
I was hoping some of you would know that. It's so missed, especially the courtyard, the dead courtyard with the mist. It is just like, oh my God.
Brian, how did you miss that?
No.
Did anybody beat Myst?
I never got off the island.
I don't remember. It was so long ago. I mean, I played it on a computer. I didn't play it on a console.
Old CD-ROM.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I gave up.
When I first watched it, it was more the Prestige, right? That's the one
Yes.
where they teleport.
Yeah.
But then Josh or Frank, the way that you were explaining it was more like Memento, where he was trying to like hide the clues for his future conscious self to realize.
Oh, speaking of clues, what was with the room with the arrows pointed and there's like an octagon of sand?
Yeah, I was going to ask that at some point as well.
I've never understood.
From what I got was it looked like the graveyard outside because the grass had the same kind of octagonal look to it as the center. And it was all pointing towards where the grave was. So I don't know if this is where he was writing another one and he didn't big enough to see I'm in 12, just because of what I learned about Moffat, or was it no, in the grave? That's where the clue is at this point.
I wonder if that's the window he looked out of to look down into the courtyard and then decided to go down there. Maybe that's what you're
I
saying.
don't know. It's never answered, and that was one thing that bothered both Brian and I. But that's what I came up with when I looked at when he came into the courtyard and they're looking down at it. I mean, oh, that reminds me of that room. And one thing I always didn't like was the back of Clara, because that was such a wig. I mean, the first time we see her, it's like, that's not her. Is she going to be this person the whole way through? And then towards the end, before you see her face, that's a different hair. That's really her. It's Jenna.
Might have been. I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was due to availability, because maybe she wasn't available. I don't know.
Probably due to budget.
Maybe. My thought on it is that you're supposed to know that she's there, but at the same time it's off, and you're supposed to know that she's not there. If that makes sense.
Nice rational. Okay.
I think it just conveniently works out that way. I think it was
Probably.
Like, we're not paying for Jenna Coleman to come in for the day when all we have is Capaldi talking.
But it was
but
such
it's
a
also
cutaway
it is
scene.
it is a companion light episode, so she's probably off doing something with the Doctor Light episode, because that's usually how they balance them out.
Right.
They save the money because
Yeah.
they film them at the same time.
But she's
So-
wearing the same wardrobe from Face the Raven, so I'm thinking if they shot that in anticipation for the Heaven Sent, so they did it the previous episode.
Yeah, they could have done.
Claire's dead forever, and they were just letting the audience know who had stuck with them that Claire is now dead, and so we don't have to worry about her coming back.
And we've definitely seen the back of her.
I don't get that.
She's standing on the chalkboard. She's gone away, so we're only seeing the back of her because she's leaving.
Never knew.
We saw her
Jokes
walk
are
away.
funnier when you have to explain them.
Absolutely, I agree.
Also, the jumper she's wearing, I like that. I don't really know if this is intentional. It's another one of those things that might have just happened to have been a coincidence, but they use Topshop all the time for their wardrobe. And the jumper that Clara wore in Face the Raven in this episode was the Topshop hybrid jumper. That was the official name of it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's fun. That is fun.
I mean, speaking of that, we learned that the hybrid that has been discussed, I think, all the way back in The Witch is Familiar, and for this specific season, turns out to be the Doctor at the end.
Does it?
It's not explained, but that's what they say at the end,
We
or
have
at least
one
the
more
Doctor says.
episode though, so who knows?
Right. Right. It is weird. I don't like we've said this hybrid overall season mystery. It was not very intriguing.
Yeah, I was never invested in it, and so when it kind of pops up in this episode as forced to me, where it's like, okay, we have first off. Well, going back a little further, he gives the confession of I didn't leave Gallifrey because I was bored. I left because I was scared. I would love the creature to go, duh. I mean, that's not really a confession. We kind of already knew that. Wasn't that big a deal. And then when he brings in the hybrid, it's like, I don't care about the hybrid. That's not confession-y enough for me. So it was. I wish those two things had worked just a little bit more organically, that they had somehow incorporated the hybrid better. But all the season-long things. I mean, like Vote Saxon, that paid off really well.
Brian's bringing up how organic can be done well, where this feels shoehorned in.
Oh, I agree with Brian. I'm just saying. I'm just kind of.
The problem is they didn't plant the seed; they shoved it down everyone's throat. I mean, it seemed so out of place every time they mentioned it. We always poked a little fun at it in all of our episodes, going, "Oh, did anybody hear the word hybrid?" Because it was so blatant without any context to it. So you didn't know what you're supposed to be worried about a hybrid about. They're just bringing it up. So I don't think that was really done well.
It wasn't organic.
Yeah, that and also Silence Will Fall. I remember during that season and the following seasons, the definition of what that was changed 3 times.
But then I looked it up where the Doctor said he was bored. It was all the way in the War Games with the second Doctor, and he admits that to his companions, that he says, well, I was bored. I don't know how I feel about Moffat changing sort of canon but I think it's old canon that I don't mind.
I would never believe that the Doctor left Gallifrey because he was bored.
Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah.
interesting enough. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's what makes him an interesting, intriguing character, you know.
Yeah, I think
he puts on this air, you know. Oh, because he also says things with like, I started running and I never stopped. That doesn't. I mean, yeah, you can infer that means bored, but to me, it more you're running from something, so you're scared-ish, you know. So it's like, were you bored?
it's what we were saying earlier. Like, it's what one tells themselves to deal with what they're not willing to admit to themselves.
And I
And see,
think
I just a lot of this episode, I just don't think they earned what for me, because it looks like and sounds like everybody thinks this episode has earned what it was shooting for. But to me, it's just like, that's not good enough. That confession's not good enough. It doesn't pay off well. You're shoving the hybrid in because you have to. Well, that doesn't work well.
Yeah, if that's, I don't even consider the hybrid to be any essential part of this episode. Like, to me,
Yeah, that's true.
to me, it's almost like that's arbitrary. To me, it's about, like I said, grief and guilt and what did I say earlier? Grief, love and grief and reincarnation. Like, it's, you have to keep reliving until you learn your lesson, until you learn to see it differently. And whatever his confession is almost more arbitrary. It doesn't matter. What matters is that he did confess something he wasn't admitting to himself.
yeah, it's like
All those things.
The journey is more important than the destination.
Yeah, it's the fact that he did finally confess what he wasn't saying. That's like when you're in therapy, when you finally say the thing that you've been feeling and not saying, you cry. Like, it's just what we need to admit to ourselves. So that, to me, is what makes this episode so wonderful. Like, the whole thing with the hybrid and the sci-fi, like sci-fi fantasy, this, that, and the other, whatever. Okay.
I find, go ahead.
Oh, the adding on top of that, I agree with everything Josh said, but on top of that, this whole episode also maybe the one episode that highlights specifically how the Doctor works, how the Doctor thinks. You see inside, like, everything that they go through when they're trying to come up with a scheme or idea, like going into his storm room mind to find out how he's calculating things, and I think that's great also.
Yeah, that bit when it shows him thinking in the room, like when he drops the flower petals and then the monocle, and
Brilliant.
yeah, like
Brilliant.
That
it's
was
the gravity,
wonderful.
it's the air pressure, it's how long it takes for the stool to drop. Oh my God, it's so good.
Yeah.
Very Sherlock, but like that's why we love it. That's why we love it.
But
that's similar,
but incredibly organic.
Yeah, and well, that's why the hybrid doesn't matter to the greatness of this episode, because it has all these, like, the hybrid's just the friends we made along the way at the end. It's just whatever. But it doesn't take away from how terrific this episode was in general, and how looking into the Doctor and how they deal with grief and how they think and how they react to certain situations.
Yeah, and that, like, theater of the mind, if you will, like, was also done in Sherlock. So I think Moffat has these sort of ideas that permeate his work.
What does he call it? His library?
Mind Castle.
Mind
Castle. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then in that scene where the Doctor is examining the painting, they play a track called "A Fly on a Painting," and to me it should have been maybe labeled "Heaven Sent Suite," because it has all the musical motifs that play throughout the episode, like the one where he's trying to escape from the veil, the creature in that like parapety type of castle wall with the windows on both sides, and it has great lighting. It plays that piece of music, and then when he's specifically looking at the painting, there's a very synthy thing that comes in, very 80s, and I was like, I like this. And then I did more research into it, and I was like, oh, this is the whole soundtrack for this episode.
Yeah, I really like the music in this episode.
Yeah,
I think this episode had its own soundtrack released also, like just this episode, if I remember correctly.
Ooh, really?
I think there.
Let's find out.
I'm not joking. I'm pretty certain that there's
No,
a soundtrack for this specific episode.
I'm seriously looking because I want it.
Well, also on the actual season soundtrack, what most of it, I think 70% or more, is this complete soundtrack for this
Is it?
episode.
Maybe that's
So
what
if
it
you have-
was. Maybe it was included with this. Like
The
this
season
episode
one?
was separate with that collection with the Series 9.
That may be it.
I just found it. So the soundtrack for Series 9 is just a soundtrack for Series 9, but Disc 3, the entirety of Disc 3, is Heaven Sent.
So ironic because I am plot and story driven. I love the character aspect of it, and what Nate and Josh said, I loved because it is showing the way the Doctor thinks and all that. It was really great. But for them to just say that the whole entire point of the episode of the hybrid, why he's locked in there and everything, is arbitrary. Gets me, and that's what I really didn't like. Because yes, we're going ahead. When you see the next episode, you get it. They're trying to find out the hybrid. He got that. He figured that out in this episode. They want to know the hybrid. I'm not going to tell them.
Okay.
And that's the whole reason that they wrote it in the overall story arc. This episode, I agree with you guys, is about something other than that. And that's the dichotomy that I don't like, in that they wrote this episode kind of fitting it in to a storyline and don't do anything with the hybrid that they built up and pushed in so many different ways.
And Frank, I think you saying that is what I was feeling when I initially watched it, because I wanted this episode to be just strictly about the grief of losing Clara, but then putting it in the confession dial because the Time Lords wanted to find out about the hybrid. I didn't like that. I kind of wanted just a single episode of him dealing with grief, being how this is how the Doctor deals with grief, because every time because it's going to happen, he loses companions and he just gets the next one. So in my mind, I was thinking, this is what we don't see, is this episode in between his new companions and taking on new companions. Like when Tennant was in between Martha and Donna, he was just kind of babbling to himself in the TARDIS console, and Capaldi does that here. So I was hoping it was kind of that type of the way that this Doctor gets over loss.
Yeah, I was thinking similarly, but more the fact that he hadn't done it before, and this is like one of the longest companions he's had, and this one hurt the most. So
it feels like the longest companion,
but it doesn't matter.
But
that's not the point. That's the point of writing the episode in the first place. But it's not the point in this story.
I did want to say, I mean, it's obvious I don't like this episode as much as you guys. But when I look back on what I was feeling about Doctor Who when this episode first aired, it completely did not work for me. Because it was like, Clara was awful. I was so done with Clara. I just wanted her to be dead. It's like, Clara is not Donna. Clara is not Rose. Clara is not Sarah Jane. Stop it.
Sorry, completely.
Well, I was just going to say, now watching it again, I still feel that way. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't even dislike. I'm sorry. Sorry, Nate, but I don't even dislike Clara really that much anymore because of this podcast and analyzing it and how I've really come to love Capaldi as a Doctor. I watched this one and I'm like, nope, not buying it. And it is a big, huge setback for me. But I just sorry, Nate.
No, I think it's deeper than that. It's not just the longest companion. It's not just that you could tell he loved her. Maybe not. Maybe just platonically, but you could tell he loved her. But I think it's a lot deeper than that, because this is the one companion that knows who he is inside and out. She has been in his time stream. She has seen every face of his. She has seen him at his darkest moment through the War Doctor and knows about the Time War. She knows everything about him, and he lost a piece of himself when she died. I feel like he lost the closest person that he's ever had since the Master.
Ooh, thank you.
Nate just said what I've been feeling for a long time and haven't been able to articulate it.
Liar. Just kidding.
No, it's true. I mean, I've talked about like the various levels of love that they've had for each other and stuff, but like, yeah.
Excuse me, I think I'll watch the episode again.
Well, I'll say this: the point when she puts her hand on his face, I got really choked up, and I think,
Hey.
you know,
I love the "get off your ass."
Yeah.
That to me was just like, it was the perfect phrase, because it's like she's not walking on eggshells at that point, and she's also not yelling at him. She's not mad, but she's just stating a fact. It's like, all right, stop, just do it.
And that bluntness fits this doctor.
Yeah. And again, I was so done with Clara, and I was so done with Moffat at this point. But now that we've done the podcast and I'm really watching Capaldi's acting, I'm remembering scenes where it's like, do you think betraying me would make me stop liking you? All you did was betray me. That's not going to end anything between us. And it is things like that I remember now. Yeah, okay, maybe I am liking it better. But again, I also have to have these things pointed out to me. I have to have them presented to me. So that's still, for me, a negative to the episode.
So Brian, I have to apologize because you know me, I have to be counterpoint. Brian also knows me that if I'm in a situation like the doctor, I would be so stubborn to do things to just piss people off. So at that time when Clara's talking to him, it's not Clara, it's the doctor. And she's in the position that's something that Brian has said before. She's acting like the doctor. She's acting like the Clara doctor and saying, get off your ass, this is what you have to do. It's like, no, you can't quit. So she is finally the doctor in this episode. And also,
yeah, it's a good, but I also see that as when people are so close to us, they do become a part of us. We're all energy, we become intertwined. And when they pass on, the energy that you have shared is still within you. So there's still a piece of you may be gone with them, but a piece of them still lives within you. So it's kind of, Clara would say this, Clara would say that.
Right.
So yes, it is coming from the doctor himself, but it wouldn't have come from the doctor himself if he never met Clara.
And I also wanted to bring...
he's also like, that is the doctor, but at the same time, he's manifested her as Clara because he completely knows Clara, just like Clara does to Danny Pink in the Christmas episode. So even though that's Clara's perfect manifestation of what she wants Danny so much,
right,
that Danny says, no, you gotta let me go. So it's like the doctor is really completely making Clara, and she would say, get off your ass.
Arse.
Anyway.
And another thing I want to bring up is about the relationship that this doctor and Clara have had as being toxic and such dependence and so mixed, where the doctor lies to her to get her on the Orient Express, and she lies about Danny. It's like everything. They're both lying to Danny, they're both lying to everybody, and how this relationship is just not a healthy relationship. So I see is he's so still fixated on Clara. I'm so glad Nate said what he did about being the closest since the master, because that does help why he's so attached to her. It does explain it more, where we didn't really voice that in the other episodes that we've reviewed. So I liked that. Thank you. But there's still...
and talk about toxic.
There's still such a... Yeah, the master or Missy. But it just seemed he didn't do this with any other companion. And these thoughts are still from before what Nate said, so I'm kind of confusing myself. But he's gone dark when he's lost other companions, but not like this. And so I'm glad you put that in there to justify it a bit. And I'm glad that they had Clara say, you have to continue, because it seems like the only reason he did. He would have given up. He would have said, I'm done at this. And just that he had Clara with what she would say, how she would say it, was really great. But also just showing that they were just so connected. It's just like my mind's going in two different directions. That's the problem. Sorry. So I'm rambling a bit.
Do you mind if I jump onto I don't know if it's going on to the next one, but the whole thing with the hybrid and themselves and the toxic relation. Sorry, I'm holding a screwdriver, ironically. Just what I was fidgeting with. Yeah, their relationship was toxic. It wasn't healthy, and that's why them being together as quote unquote a hybrid was not a good idea at all, and why they needed to separate and forget about each other.
I remember it was all done by Misty.
Misty?
Missy.
Okay, I heard Misty.
But so the master, the one that you're referring to, the closest relationship he has, is the one who created this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that would have sat better with me as a season finale kind of reveal is that Missy was the one creating the hybrid. I don't know.
Well,
I'm just
I'm glad.
thinking.
I liked when they,
Just thinking, what if?
yeah, but I mean, I'm glad that we knew that Missy set them up and she was the one in the shop with the phone call. I'm glad we already know that.
Yeah.
That was like a season long payoff, I guess, because it was Matt Smith with Bells of St. John when Missy calls Clara, or Clara gets
The help.
an IT help number, and it's
Mhm.
actually Missy in a shop, and then we find that out in a different doctor, being Capaldi, that yeah, Missy was the one. And then this was just my initial reaction from the when we finally get to Gallifrey at the end of this episode. This was set up all the way back in Day of the Doctor. So I'm like, I know you said you're gonna go home the long way around, but this is the long way around. It's like that was Matt Smith, and then we went through all his regeneration and departure, and then we had one full season with Capaldi and Jenna Coleman, and then we get to another season with them. Like, I was looking forward to going to Gallifrey.
There was, I want to say it was a San Diego Comic-Con question. I don't remember the question. I don't remember the specific answer, but it was something about Matt Smith being on Trenzalore in Christmastown or whatever for X amount of years until he aged to death, basically. And someone saying, how could you do that to him? I don't remember the exact words of the question. And summing up what Stephen Moffat said was something along the lines of, wait till you see what I'm doing to Peter.
Yeah, he's got some sort of weird fascination with turning his doctors old.
Yes. And as much as the numbering of the doctors, I OCD off of that. I also OCD off of the doctor's age. And that right now it's like he is not 2 billion years old. He not regenerated, but he rebooted. So he's 3 weeks older when he walks out of the confession dial. No, because they have just too much fun with the doctor's age, and I don't
it's
want
like
that.
saying Rory isn't 2,000 years old.
Right.
Oh, that's right. He's not, but he is.
Because his mind is, yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Because he remembers.
That reminds me of Contact, when it's like a second that the ball falls through the craft falls through the thing, and then they check the recording, like, we got hours of recording.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention when you guys are talking about the Doctor and borrowing a TARDIS or bored or running away is that there's a difference between changing what's canon or the main storyline because you started a TV show and did not expect it to run this long, and the character itself has changed. But that's one way to change it, because the story is actually changing and it grew beyond what you were doing. And now they're changing it just to change it. Like, you're changing it just to change it. You're not adding, you're not doing it because the character itself is growing and changing and altering. And that's one thing, just when you guys were talking about whether or not he was bored or whether or not it was because running away from something or scared. It's like, that to me didn't bother me because that was a natural progression of creating something. That was part of, it's a TV show. We all know that. We get that. And how they started it was only going to be on for a few seasons. No one's going to remember this. And took on its own life. So it did change and grow, and they're reflecting that and responding to it. I'm sorry, there's just one thing that's going on now that's bugging me going, it's just changing just to change. You know, even Russell was saying he's writing it for the social media rather than just doing it for a storyline. He's writing it for social media. I'm sorry, the total tangent. You're right.
I can say that holes or changes or things like that do help, as frustrating as they are, even for myself. In the long run, the long way around, do help with the, not the continuity of the show. It helps in the future. So like, even we'll say like
longevity.
Longevity, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. So when we got 2005, the Doctor came back. He's the last of the Time Lords. Like, what did I miss between the 8th Doctor movie and now? Like, Gallifrey's just gone. Everyone's dead. And all of a sudden, we have the War Doctor, a missing incarnation of him. This whole storyline of how the Time War was. And there, all these holes and all these changes do help in the longevity of things. When we call back and retrospectively fit it all in, it does make for great storytelling in the long run, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with you on the War Doctor, because even Eccleston, I think it was Gallifrey 1 or wherever we were when we saw him, he was like, I was supposed to be the war doctor.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I didn't, or I'm okay that I didn't, because then we wouldn't have gotten John Hurt as the war doctor, and that's awesome.
Right.
And it's just, it was great to hear that from him because of how things were kind of soured when he left, that he was able to acknowledge that I was not there, but something awesome came out of it. So I get what you're saying, Nate.
Good stuff. I kept thinking earlier, it's like I left because I wasn't. It's not because I was bored. I didn't leave because I was bored. I left because I was scared. What were you scared of? I was scared of being bored.
I didn't know
I
it was
can
a
relate to.
hybrid, or at the time I didn't know if it was a hybrid or if it was because of the what's it called, the Time Lord Academy and things like that. Because they already showed him being scared in the series 8. They already showed him being scared in that little hut during Listen, calling back to that episode again.
Right.
And also the episode with Martha where he says the kids look into the time vortex
Yeah.
Oh,
and some go mad, and she says, well, what did you do? And he said, I ran and never stopped.
I think that was Last of the Time Lords or Utopia.
Yeah.
One of the season 3 finale.
Yeah, I think it's Last of the Time Lords. And it's just like I started running.
It was cheesy that all those skulls were in the water, because that's what people like. Oh, it's post-apocalyptic. There's tons of dead bodies. We'll just put a bunch of skulls. And all I ever think, I get kind of pedantic. Like, well, where's the rest of the skeleton?
Yeah.
Like, why isn't the rest of it? Why is it just skulls? But now we know why. It's just skulls, and I really get a kick out of that.
And those skulls were practical. They were modeled after Capaldi's own head. What they did, they took a life cast and then they did the prosthetics to what do you call that? Figure out what his skull looked like without actually casting his skull, because then he'd be dead.
Yeah.
But that was for the episode
Under the Lake and Before the Flood.
Thank you.
Because they had the prosthetics on his face to make him look ghostly with the sunken eyes.
Oh, we're talking about a different episode, not this one?
Both.
No,
They
I'm
were
saying
sort of
that
like
that's
the other.
that's where they got they had to do the life cast first, and then they just reused it for this episode.
I thought the transition of him underwater and turning upside down and the light changing, and then he's underwater, like, it was really, really cool.
Yeah. This is also the first season finale since Moffat took over that does not feature the Cybermen. If you think about it, the Cybermen were in when the Pandorica opens, and then
This is a finale?
season finale.
No,
An ultimate
well,
episode,
the next
usually kind of like a two-parter.
It's I would
Hellbent.
consider this 2-part, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Hellbent.
I mean, the names of the or titles of the episodes indicate that they are related.
Yeah, but it was sounding like you were saying there was no other episode after this for the season.
No, well, he's just saying that the ends, there's Cybermen.
There's
were
more to
involved.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also, to be honest with you, I don't remember much of Hellbent either. So it's like, I can't tell you who the hybrid is. I don't know what the hybrid is now.
We've alluded to it today.
Yeah, I know. But it's still just like, yeah.
By year 3 billion, do you think he just walked out the window because the skulls were that high?
He's just walking around with all these skulls in here.
Like that fable with the crow, or experiment, whatever, where this crow puts the stones in the bottle of water to get water.
Oh.
Or the bird, according to this episode, who kept shipping at the mountain.
Yeah.
Right, and I like that bit too. How, because even though we still don't get it, and it's not until he says that part about the fable about the bird, then we realize, oh, he figured it out back then because the bird made him think of that poem, which gave him the idea to do this. I really like that.
I did not make that connection until not in my initial watch. Definitely did not make that connection. So that one is a little, I don't know what to say about that. I'm in the middle because number one, it made me go and look this other Grimm fairy tale up. So that was cool. But at the same time, I'm like,
well, it just shows now, of course, he could have written punch the diamond wall instead of just
right.
bird,
but my thing is, like, if he had done a more well-known Grimm fairy tale, I think I would have liked that.
Yeah, but I would. A mystery.
Yeah, but the way he did it is one word equates to one fairy tale. Like, I was thinking bird. Like, what bird? But if you did, I don't know, like Humpty Dumpty, it would be like an egg or all the king's men. The bird chips away at the mountain, and then it's a very weird fairy tale. When I read it, I was like, oh, this is a weird choice, but okay.
I'm just picturing if it was like Humpty Dumpty and he just wrote egg.
Yeah.
Yes.
Less words.
I think having the word bird was a mislead because it misled me to think it was a raven.
Right, that's what I
Right.
first
Oh,
thought.
So I think it was meant as the mislead with that okay with the Shaka when the walls
No.
fell.
Say what?
Shocking
our
when
second-
the walls fell.
That's our
I
second
had
Star
to
Trek
try.
reference.
I had to.
And they all fall down.
Going back to Humpty Dumpty, very good, very good.
Oh no, that's the Star Trek reference. That's the
I know,
other Star
I
Trek
know.
reference.
I'm being dumb, sorry.
I had a thought too. This is something I realized back then, and just to mention it and or advise it in case anyone didn't catch it. So when the doctor comes out of the teleporter and picks up the sand and lets it run through his hands, that's not sand. That's all him dusted in that room.
Yeah. I got that.
You're grossed out about it. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
It is cool, but it's again grim.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Good job,
Grim.
good job.
2 M's.
Do you think he knew right away that that was like an expired Time Lord, and already the gears were working? Because it looks like he plays off pretty dumb in the episode itself, but sometimes the Doctor doesn't look like he's thinking what he actually is.
Yeah,
But
I'm surprised if he didn't, not necessarily Time Lord, but wouldn't have like been like, this isn't sand, this is biological.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
because
probably
like
knew that.
a different doctor, I'm thinking of Tennant, would have tasted it.
Yeah.
And then he would have known. But this is not that doctor, so I'm okay suspending my disbelief that he didn't know.
But also remember in the first half of this whole episode, he's thinking he's just one in a long line of prisoners.
Right.
Yeah.
So that could be somebody else.
So it's that's true. That's true.
Right.
The hand that pulls the lever is, I don't think is Capaldi's hand. It looked a little chubbier than his hand and stuff. I think it's so we firmly don't think that's his hand in the beginning.
I don't know, because when re-watching it again, because I did watch it again just before we got onto here, as the hand dissipates, I swear I heard like his sigh, like or
No.
something like
I
that.
mean, actor-wise.
Oh, no, I know that, but I'm not sure if they actually did change the hand. But that'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
After we know, you could see the cuff of the coat, but before that, it was only like just the hand.
Ah. Okay. Yeah. Whatever. They may have shot the same exact thing twice, and this, that, and the other, but you know.
But I mean, I guess now I could say, I totally understand people loving this episode, and I'm really happy for them to put it in like the top 5 Doctor Who's ever. But this episode is my hell. I hate when I was a little kid, I couldn't stand stories of we're trapped in a scary place and want to get out. I don't like Wizard of Oz, don't like Alice in Wonderland. I have to force myself sometimes to enjoy things like that. I've stopped watching things because it's like, oh, this episode is them just going to be escaping from a scary place. I'm out. But this is my hell. And I'm the opposite of Frank. Frank says that stubbornness would set in and he would get up just to be stubborn. I'd be the opposite. I'd be sitting in the TARDIS console room going, I'm not playing your game. I'll die. I'm fine. I'll just die. I just can't enjoy it. I don't want to say I hate it, but I hate it. Even watching it again, and I love Capaldi. He's great. But I also like I said earlier, I like the scenes in the TARDIS because he's home. I know he's not, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, he's for a second, he's in a good place. But it's just like 2 billion years. No. Please don't make me watch that again. I also feel that the clues are just too convoluted. There's just too many of them. You could cut 1 or 2 of them out, and it would not make me feel so, what the hell is going on for so long? And then at the end of the episode, it's like, what the hell was that? So it's like, what the hell is going on? And then at the end, you're like, what was that? So I still don't like this episode. I really thought I was going to turn around. Honestly, Frankel, you know, and Eugene too. It was like I was waiting because it was like I want to do it right before the podcast because I'm going to flip around and then I'm going to be completely opposite of my, what was my initial reaction thing that Eugene and I taped earlier, and I'm really not, And as much as I love Capaldi, and I shocked Frank with this, it was like he carried the whole episode. That is very true. This was probably one of the hardest things that he's ever had to act in, and I totally get that. And in the end, he's fine. That's all. I don't have any emotional connection beyond irritation to anything that happens in this episode. I don't get sad. I don't get moved. I don't have any joy when the diamond wall falls down. It's just like, oh, finally, thank God. And then you come out and it's Gallifrey, and it's like, well, where the hell did Gallifrey come from? It's trapped in its own little universe still, and they're mad at him. Why are they mad at him? They gave him a full regeneration set, through the crack in the wall. So anyway, that's what was just going through my. And would Clara just stay dead? So I kind of got all that out at once because I didn't want to be like nitpicking it while you guys were saying how much you really, really liked it.
No, I mean it makes sense. I mean, if it goes rather on par with like what he's been saying before. He was done with Clara. He didn't like Clara, and so in this whole episode is the 12th Doctor dealing with grief along with the audience, dealing with their grief over Clara and dealing with it to the point where it's a stab in the heart at the very beginning when he's talking to the door and he's like, see Clara or something like that, and refers to her, and that pause of like, oh, she's not there anymore. But if you're completely done with that character because you didn't like them, and on top of that having a criteria of not liking Escape from Scary Place episodes, I can see why it wouldn't be for you. I don't fault you for that, but it's still the greatest episode of all time.
Yeah, see, old Brian would be like, really, but right now it's like, oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, that's cool. But he can't be mad at the Time Lords because the Time Lords didn't do anything. Clara died because of Clara. Clara was stupid. She didn't think it through. She thought she was invincible and found out that she wasn't. I mean, if they had left it there, they still could have had this episode. But Clara should have been dead from the Raven on. But that's in regards to the other episode, which I do like a lot better now.
That would be Face the Raven.
Yes. So I'm gonna climb down from my high horse now. And
I'm sorry I can't hear you from your horse. It's really high up there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really good lines that I think we kind of skipped over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic ones.
Yeah, like the very first when the Doctor is running through the corridor, and I think he says, "Oh, I've reached the end of the corridor." What like a symbol of like my whole life
sums up my life.
Yeah, sums up my life. That was really good. I got a kick out of, I bet you've never seen this before, and then as we learn, like he does that every time. Well written, like a fun a fun non sequitur for the first time we get to see it, and then it's revealed like how stuck in this kind of lane or trap or repeating these actions the Doctor is.
Doesn't he also wink at the camera at one point?
Yes, he does.
He does a lot with the TARDIS in his little storeroom of his mind.
Yeah. He does break the fourth wall.
Yeah,
and he does a lot of that weird. But I love it. The weird, like jerky Peter Capaldi Doctor when he's like going up the stairs, he's like bum bum bum, and then he winks at the camera. And when he's running down the corridors, it's like his legs are moving, but the top half of his body doesn't. And it's just a little quirky 12th Doctor thing. I also love it when he charms the door.
That was great. Was that from a previous season, like old Doctor Who, where he had a psychic link with the door or something, or is that?
Not that I think they're just doing a play on. He does have his sonic sunglasses, but he wouldn't be able to use them on the wood door.
Yeah, the wood part is the thing.
But the way he describes it, you're always cross. You get all these knocks, but none of them are for you. I thought that was really clever and really funny. So I do like all of the humor little bits that they put in.
But then even they had that where he's eating by himself and like kind of snaps to himself and how long am I going to be here? And he just says like forever and drops the spoon. Like the lighting was doing a lot of work there, but Capaldi was also bringing like that high drama to this episode. So I like that the writing was able to go, that dynamic from those very funny lines to like a really weighty in our grief. When we say, how long am I going to keep feeling this way? It often feels like forever. And even 2 billion years is not forever. Like that time ends. So that was a good lesson.
Yeah, you saying that reminded me of one of the other lines that says, maybe I'm in hell. That's okay. I'm not scared of hell. It's just heaven for bad people.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the other one where it's like, this is going to scare me to death. Must be Christmas. And there's a couple different ways you can take that in this episode where it's like, does he really mean that? Or is he just putting on that Dr. air?
I think he
really
means it
is.
with that face of his. That
True.
face he
I mean,
gave
yes.
was kind of like demented excitement.
And that's true. And I mean, we see that a lot. Like I think of the one with Rose and the doctor going, oh my God, it's a werewolf. Like, this is awesome. But in this specific episode where he's talking about, confessions and things like that. Yes, I do believe he does mean it's Christmas, but there is a part of me that kind of puts a different layer on it in this specific episode. But yeah, he thinks it's Christmas.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, every Christmas is last Christmas.
Wow.
But when you're talking about the door, 2 episodes popped into my mind. The wardrobe, Doctor the Witch,
Widow and the Wardrobe.
where they had the trees that were sentient or alive. And then also when the one that we don't really like all that much, when Clara, the doctor, in the earth is covered with trees to protect it from the solar...
Force of the Night, I think it was.
Yes, Force of the Night.
No, I don't fault you for forgetting that episode. It wasn't the greatest.
yeah, we didn't like it all that much either.
We
But
can agree on that, yeah.
that there's an essence to the tree, so that both of those episodes kind of came back to my mind when I'm watching it, that there is something in the wood that's from the trees.
What about
He's lucky it wasn't Boston Rod.
or the Jabe,
True.
the Jabe from End
Oh,
of the
yeah.
World.
Oh, I forgot about it, Jay.
Yeah, the Forest of Cheem.
That would have been funny.
Oh, that
Didn't we
was
have an
bad.
adventure together? Don't you remember me?
That's why she's so cross. I also like the line that deals with death. It's kind of campy, but it's deep at the same time. It's like, it's funny. The day you lose someone isn't the worst. At least you've got something to do. It's all the days they stay dead.
I really, yeah. That line does hit me, and it probably hits me more now than it did then. It's a very well written Moffat line.
I don't know if it's that's directly related to. I don't know if it was Magician's Apprentice or Witch's Familiar. I don't know if that was setting up this with the statement in that one, but it calls back to me the quote I'm going to paraphrase because I don't know if I remember correctly. Immortality isn't living forever. Immortality is watching everyone else die.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was a recent episode.
That was probably the girl who died or the woman who lived.
That's it. It's the woman who lived.
Me.
Okay.
It's me.
A shielder.
Okay, I could swear the doctor said it to Clara at one point.
Hmm.
No,
But maybe maybe I'm wrong.
Let me try to look it up real quick.
Maybe in telling Clara like the curse that he accidentally put on a shielder.
Oh,
That's probably what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the girl who died. I just
Okay.
looked it up.
And it was the doctor or was it her?
You're asking too many things. Just kidding. It is the doctor, but it's not saying here who he said it to.
Okay.
Right
If he's
before-
saying it, if it has to do with the shoulder, I think he's saying it to Clara after he realized he cursed her with immortality,
Yeah.
just like himself.
And that shot of a shielder kind of becoming me, where like the time lapse in the background.
Yeah.
She's on like a turntable.
Mhm.
The director of this episode is Rachel Talalay, and she's the first American or U.S.-born raised director to direct Doctor Who. Her first episode was Dark Water, then Death in Heaven. Now she's doing Heaven Sent, and then Hell Bent, and then World Enough and Time, The Doctor Falls, and Twice Upon a Time. So she's kind of doing all the finales.
They also don't have very many women writers.
Yeah. And also with Rachel Talalay, she's a very
Directors, I mean. Sorry, directors.
she's a very horror-based, or her origins in the industry come from horror because she was the only female director on the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise with Freddy's Final Nightmare, and she started with Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, the Dream Warriors as the line producer. So I just thought that was worth bringing up, her horror background and the way it was shot and covered.
And thanks. That also reminded me of something else that initially with this episode bothers me is, do you remember in, again, Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar? I don't remember which one, but at the beginning of the second episode, Clara's tied up and Missy tells a story of how the doctor escapes, and he's in a stone fortress castle. And it's like, I can never get that image out of my head while watching this episode. So I think the first time I watched this, it's like, well, how does that connect? Is he going to be attacked by these things, and we're going to see him how he really got out of it? It just stuck. And then it was like, oh, it has nothing to do with each other. Well, then why did you make it look so much the same? Did you film in the same location? Was a quarry not available?
Can I answer that?
Yes.
Because it shows how he got out. She expressed how fast he was thinking and calculating, and we saw how he processes in this episode.
Oh, okay.
Because she was specifically highlighting that he had to do the calculations and to make everything exact on whatever that watch was in order to get out of that situation, and that this episode showed exactly how he processes in his mind.
Can I watch every episode with you? Because I miss a lot, but that's brilliant. Oh my god.
So I looked up both those episodes' filming locations, and they're completely different. The castles the castles in this episode were Cardiff Castle and Caerphilly Castle, which we've been to before, but dressed up differently.
Seriously, that's like the coolest thing.
One of the Gallifrey 1 conventions that we went to, Mark McQuoid was there, and he was the camera operator for this episode, and he said it was one of his favorite things to do because it was just him and Capaldi on set. He was a very nice guy to talk to.
I don't remember where it came from, and I wish I had information to go back to, because I'm saying a lot of I remember this or I heard this. When the veil had touched Peter and the 12th Doctor was burned, the costume they used was, I want to say, the coat, the Series 8 coat that they just bashed up and ruined because they still needed the velvet coat. And so it was actually a blue camel hair coat that they destroyed, and just darkened so you couldn't even tell it was blue. It just looked like it was charred.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, so when we first saw the veil, the creature, I thought it was the trickster from the Sarah Jane Adventures, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, because of the cloaked nature of that creature or villain.
Yeah. Well, this is the epitome of what I was talking about in previous episodes, where eventually they just realized that Capaldi was great at doing speeches and monologues, and that led up to the Zygon invasion and inversion, where it's like we had to sit through 2 full episodes of that to get to his 10-minute monologue at the end, which is awesome and fantastic. And I think after they reached that point, they're like, give him a whole episode. Just let him monologue the whole thing. He can do it. He can pull it off. And I just wonder what he thought when he read the script, going, are you serious?
It was on the I think it was the Doctor Who extra on the DVD where he said, this is all me? I don't know. He had a little bit of doubt, but then as he read it, he grew to enjoy it.
Wonder how that table read went.
He's just sitting at the table all alone.
Yeah.
And then Moffat's like, good job, Peter. The other person that is in this episode is the Veil, and that is played by Jamil Reddy Quarrel, and he was previously Colony Sarf in The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, which we've mentioned also in this episode.
And Jenna Coleman does get a credit
at the end.
Gets it at the end.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting touch. Well, you know what? They probably didn't want to give it away.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would have been a spoiler.
Yeah.
That's why. But I just kind of love where it's like, now you're and guest starring.
And the one extra kid. little extra.
That's right.
Didn't have to say a
Oh,
word,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
like he was there. Everybody keeps forgetting about him.
Oh, they did not credit him. Let me look if I can find that.
It was just some boy that wandered onto the set, and Peter just kept going off. It's like, this is perfect. Keep rolling.
And he was like, "Boy, what day is it? Get me a Christmas goose."
I think it's across the bay in the Citadel.
Yeah, he's not credit. I can't find anything. Anyway. So, Heaven Sent. Who is this episode good for, or more specifically, this episode is good for who? A new viewer, a casual viewer, a fan of the show, or a diehard?
I'm kind of torn between a new viewer and a fan. I think a new viewer, because it's not like you can't understand what's happening as you're supposed to. You just don't know the references. But the references are kind of what make it so weighty. So I don't think a new viewer would get enough out of it. So I say fan.
I think I'm going to agree with Josh and say fan, although I definitely enjoyed it a lot on this rewatch. From what I've heard from a few of us on this podcast is that it did take a few rewatches until we really enjoyed it. So that's why I'm going to say fan for this episode. I think it is a really good episode now, today, like watching it. But yes, I'm going to go with fan.
Well, I was gonna come in and say casual because I didn't feel like there was anything in this episode that like you necessarily needed to know to feel like the weight of or whatever. And I also watched this like initially out of context. And again, I watched it without watching the previous episode. But then I went back and watched the previous episode, and I think I might have liked this episode better if I had watched, what's the previous episode?
Face the Raven.
Face the Raven, and kind of like, I think you need to know what the doctor just went through to appreciate this episode. So for that reason, I'm going to say fan.
It's tough. I'm not giving it a diehard, but diehard doesn't mean bad. It just means what do you have to know to enjoy it. So I did consider Die Hard, but I thought you'd all come after me with pitchforks and torches.
No, I get it.
Or a spade.
Also, one thing that I didn't point out is that Capaldi actually uses the word bespoke. That deserves Die Hard enough. That pushes it down because I hate that. That word is so stupid. But I'm going to say you have to be a fan because if you want to have an emotional connection to it, you need to know what he's gone through. You need to know his character. You need to know his history, you know? The confessions would mean nothing to you if you hadn't ever seen this before. I didn't run away because I was bored. I ran away because I was scared. What's he talking about? So, I mean, I do think you have to be a fan of the show. You don't even have to be a diehard. You can be a fan and enjoy this episode. For me, it's different, but in my opinion, for everybody else.
I was thinking casual because the fans seem to be split. Some loved it, some didn't. And after hearing what Brian and Kelsey had said, I'm switching and I'll be part of the group just because the knowing more, that really made the people like it who were fans because they had that extra information that I don't think the casual would have. So fan.
Before we go on though, have you read have where you said that it splits the fans? I thought this was like universally loved like Blink, and I was quite the outlier.
True, but I'm talking about the fans being me, you, and some others.
Oh, right, okay.
Where it's like, how do people, and now
Okay.
watching it again and again. So that's where I was thinking Die Hard, but since they liked it at first, that's what made me think fan. Where because of what we knew, we didn't like it being fans.
Okay.
Because of what we knew, and so that's where my mind going. That could be a positive or a negative, but I think for the most people did like it, so that's where we're putting fan.
I have a couple tiers to my answer. Can you watch this episode and understand what's going on and appreciate the story for it as a new watcher and a casual watcher? Yes. Is it a wasted watching it as a new watcher or a casual fan? Yes. You need to at least be a fan of the show, at minimum, watching through Capaldi's journey to get the emotional attachment and the meaning and to get everything that is this episode was written for, you need to be a fan, at least watching Capaldi's run. Do you need to be a hardcore fan, a diehard, to get everything going on? No, there's no deep cuts, there's no references that require you to have extensive knowledge of the history of the show, but you do at least need to be a fan to get the full appreciation of what this is all about.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put in a fan as well, and I think everybody said what I was thinking, but the main one is kind of what Nate just said, is that you have to know what Clara means to the 12th Doctor in order for this episode to hit you the right way. So yeah, thanks Nate for joining us. Tell our audience where they can find you.
At my home, I'm just sitting here.
What's the address? Just kidding.
Address.
I'm Nate. I with Temple of Geek. You can reach us at templeofgeek.com or on all the Instagrams, TikTok-y things, and social media. What's it called? Are out there right now. And yeah, Temple of Geek's fine. I'll just plug that. I'm good.
Nice.
I'm Nate. Hi.
Thanks again for joining us. This wraps up Heaven Sent. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time when the future becomes the present.
You just listened to an episode of Who Knew?
Our wonderful theme music is by Michael Grady.
Find him on Facebook at The Universe Explodes.
Additional music is by Damiel Paggio.
Additional music by Paul Ohlers.
All our episodes are engineered by Auburn, and you can find him at auburnbinkley.com.
You can also find this show in several places.
Follow us on Twitter at Who Knew Podcast.
Subscribe, review, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Who Knew Podcast.
All our episodes are on whoknewpodcast.com.
Visit our Facebook page.
Please leave comments, reviews, and click like to support Who Knew Podcast.
To listen to our show on your Amazon Echo device, subscribe to us on Amazon Music,
And then ask your Amazon device to play your podcast subscriptions.
This podcast is inspired by Doctor Who,
The longest running sci-fi show in history.
And especially the revival spearheaded by Russell T. Davis.
Thanks to Russell, Sidney Newman,
Verity Lambert, Ron Grainer,
and all those involved in the adventures of our favorite Time Lord.
Your work continues to inspire and entertain.
Thanks again for joining us. This wraps up Heaven Sent. Thanks for listening. Stay
you
safe.
didn't do the cast.
I did.
Well, you did do the cast.
it was so quick.